Hey, 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 hello, my beautiful beings of love and light. Just hanging out by the pool and had something that really for the last couple days keeps coming through on this whole Me Too subject. And so first off, I'm just going to give it a minute because I just decided to jump on and hopefully, peeps can be like, hey, Marci's talking, let's chat. Let's hang out for a bit. See, all my peeps showing up. Love you guys. Start chiming in with me, you guys. Let me know where you're from, where you're chiming in from all over the world. We love to hear where our peeps are at and what you're up to. So feeling inspired to talk about this because obviously, it's interesting because as a lot of times knowing, first off, awesome, Jesse Elder was talking about, he was just messaging me this morning and sharing some things with me, which I love him too. So thanks, beautiful. You're gorgeous as well. I received that. Thanks, you guys, for joining. And first off, just starting with love and appreciation. I love it. So I had, it's kind of like when everyone was putting focus on Trump, my knowing that I'm a powerful creator and everything that I put focus on adds to that creation. I really chose to not put any focus on Trump. And so I want to kind of talk about this in this way that as I've seen this come up, first off, this is such a beautiful, beautiful thing to become seen. And I've had so many peeps are feeling so much energy in the field because of this. There's a lot of heavy energy in the field because you guys might have noticed that all the things going on in the world, bringing up a lot of the collective consciousness, a lot of the feeling the collective consciousness a little bit greater of fear, lack, scarcity, worry. And we're just feeling this heavy energy. And so it's awesome that what's happening with this shift, I believe what's happening in my personal intuition and the things that I've seen and been told and been given is that we're shifting from fourth dimension to fifth dimension. There's this massive shifting happening in the world where it's kind of like we're finally getting to take full responsibility of how we've acted as a humanity, how we've created our species to operate with each other. We've operated in a place of separation. This is mine, that's yours. And this is exactly why we've created the patterns and behaviors that this is all bringing up. Sexual abuse, all sorts of abuse and all these things. And so I really feel as like we're in this shifting stage where we're getting to look at our deepest core wounds. And what is so awesome and amazing about that, looking at our deepest core wounds, right? I know, hearts to that, is that we're seeing them to become our core strengths. Your deepest, darkest shadows become your greatest strengths, your gifts, because the mess that you called in always gets to become your message. It's the contracts you asked for were given to you to understand all things to become the being of love and light that you are, that you've always been. So I just really wanted to bring some energy and attention to this and bring to it some positive light, because with as much energy is out here right now around this, with so many, everyone's hands raised, right? I mean, I don't think we've found that anyone's hand hasn't been raised. I know my hand's raised, starting at the age of 4 years old, which I'm happy to share with you guys some of my experiences and how I saw these abuse or these things kind of correlate, these traumas, how they've correlated to our limiting beliefs, how they've correlated to our limiting experiences, and how they've held us playing small, how they've kept us afraid to shine so bright and afraid to be big and huge and expansive, because here we have these experiences where it's like, well, I'll be attacked or I'll be hurt or it's not safe to be attractive. It's not safe to be seen. It's not safe to be heard. And I had all of those myself and I got to work through those. So this is kind of what I'm wanting to really chat about, in that how do we not just bring awareness to this energy? And it's such a beautiful thing that everyone is standing up and saying, this is what our society has been operating. These are the things that we've been too hush-hush to talk about, right? Like, years ago it was, we've come from a place of acting so prim and proper to where then it became, so all of a sudden it was acceptable to wear shorts and tank tops and to use different kind of languaging, and everyone kind of like, we became more free and more accepting and more loving. Well, there's always been these things like, let's not talk about sex. Let's not talk about abuse. Let's not talk about even our shadows and our stories. And I love seeing that, one of the greatest things for me was, as I found the freedom in sharing my full story, was like, well, now there's nothing for me to be afraid of, anything to hide, right? Like, it's like when we're like, oh, I wouldn't want people to find this out about me, because what would they think? Or if they think this or they think that. And we've been trained to think that, we get to wear a mask to be accepted and loved. And when I realized that any bit of hiding I was doing, see, again, full transparency is neither hiding or it's like there's nothing to hide and there's nothing to prove. So if we're in full transparency, I'm free. I'm so free, like living in full authenticity and vulnerability. So that's what I see as such a huge shift already for our, hi Fanny, mwah, for our beautiful society, is that we're already going, wow, you know what? We're looking around and going, hey, it's safe for me to raise my hand too. It's safe for me to say, hey, you know what? I experience this too, and let's bring awareness and let's bring some light to this way of operating and being. And what comes with that can feel like also a very heavy victim mentality or a victim of circumstance. Or sometimes we look at some of these situations that are shared. I remember reading one of my good friends she's a beautiful, powerful influencer, and just reading, hi Audrey, reading her experience, and something happened to her at 7 years old. And we could look at that and go, how could you ever, how could we keep that from happening? Because in every circumstance and situation, from a little child choosing to do something that actually can create abuse to also an adult creating abuse, we can look at these from all ways. So it's beautiful that we're bringing some authenticity and vulnerability to it. And sometimes people can feel like, well, all this shows is that all it brings for a lot of people who don't move through it consciously and seeing all sides of it and seeing it for what it is, what we see is more like evidence that the world's scary, the world's not a safe place, see abuse is everywhere, see no matter what I do, no matter where I go, it's gonna, I'm gonna be abused. It doesn't matter if I'm beautiful or if I'm this or I'm that. And so my intention of this, and what I've really been just feeling some inspiration around the last couple days, is offering a solution around this and also bringing voice to, we're all feeling this massive heavy energy. There is a lot going on in the field, and we're all feeling like, wow, this presence to our shadows and how we've operated as a human society and in humanity. And so again, one thing that I want to bring presence to is in our participation in this, where it is a clear saying, like, I fully am exposed, fully vulnerable and transparent. This is my experience, and this is what I choose to do with it. This is what I learned from it. This is my contribution from it. This is my feedback from it. Because if we look at any experience, right, if we all, now we're all kind of asking for the light to be shined on sexual abuse and just abuse in general and some of these things. If we said, let's shine the light on this, everyone and their dog would probably raise their hands too, because these are our human experiences, right? And so, again, kind of dropping back, where at first I was just kind of evaluating, and because I believe in tuning in and sitting with and feeling really divinely in tune and aware of where my energy gets to flow. And it's like, awesome that this is bringing awareness, and it's kind of like, when we look at all things and we can see them for the good and all the things that are involved in it, it's like some people would say, everyone puts so much energy towards Trump. Well, what happened? Trump got elected. Okay, now I knew and I chose, I was like, I have no desire to put any energy towards Trump. What I would put energy towards is what solutions are. It's just like Mother Teresa said, if you invite me to a war rally, I won't attend. But if you invite me to a peace rally, I will always come. Because she knew that the power of her vibration, being focused on something, was going to create. And just knowing that, and I'll walk through some of my own shifts, but knowing this, that, it's like, cool, now we can actually see how, when we see that Trump got elected, if people go, see, our government's screwed and da-da-da, and all these people fall into victimhood around it. But what actually happened? What did we actually get as the gift from this happening is people stood up and rose, and they said, you know what? We no longer get to just depend on the government. We get to provide as a humanity for ourselves. We get to stand for what we believe and not say one person might be able to make these decisions. We can actually have more of a voice. Let's look at what happened with, the 9/11. I was actually just in New York, got to go went there to do some corporate training and got to play with my little boy for a week. And one of the things he wanted to go see was the 9/11 grounds and the memorial. And we got to see the new Oculus that they build and the memorial grounds. And going through even feeling that really heavy, sad energy, I talked to him about, I'm like, what was amazing is how we saw our society rally together. We saw people come together in compassion and love and rebuild. And so, you can look at the same thing with Hitler, all the horrible, terrible things that happened there, and the amazing, coming together that came from that, the stories that came from that, the forgiveness that came from that, all of these things, when we see them as, we see all sides of it, all of a sudden it can give us a better perspective. I believe Trump is there now as one of our greatest saviors. I know I might be like, for that, but what I mean is, he chose a role. He chose to be an archetype for our society now, in this time, to call us to experience and see those things, to experience those triggers and call us to act as a greater society. So what's happening now? Notice this whole massive shift. All these things are happening in energy and around the world, and like crazy things with the weather. And also now there's like, you know, from shootings to things popping up where people are just like, whoa, what we're feeling this rise of what we've created from living in these shadows and living and hiding in these places. And it's calling us as a humanity to rise into something different. We can only rise in love. We can't fall in love. We can only rise in love. Love only gives us more freedom. So the point of all of this, thank you, Audrey, for those beautiful, beautiful hearts that you're giving me too. So the point to this, right, is that we can only, when we apply love to this, or when we see this for all things, then we can create a solution to move through it. And this is what I really wanted to share around it, is we can now take that and go, oh, okay, so can I take in some of those perceptions around like how some of these heaviest, darkest things, most of us would look at our experiences in life, our shadows, right, our traumas, all these experiences, and would probably be able to say, I wouldn't change it because it allowed me to become who I am. Now, in the moment, in the experience of it, it doesn't feel so easy to do that. Yet when we understand that we get to participate this in a way of seeing it for what it is, also taking full responsibility, which I'm going to walk through some things as well, and how to shift it. But this is the main point I wanted to bring about, is that as we're all talking about this and we're sharing this and it's being seen, what's really what I would hope, my true intention, what's kind of been coming through me, would hope to be seen, is that when we realize that we've been hiding these experiences, these traumas, we've stuffed them, we've pushed them down. What's happening on the surface, if this is our underlying frequency, is that we have said, so my own personal experience is, I saw how it sabotaged my body. I saw it's how, I didn't feel safe. From the time I was 4 years old, I had a kidnapping attempt. I had so many kidnapping attempts, I didn't even remember them all. I remember actually my mom and my sister were just out here. I paid for my family to come out for us to go to Legoland and play. And we were reminiscing and talking about something. And I've been sharing a lot of shifts and perceptions with my family, a lot of healing with my family, me choosing to not be in a certain religion and choosing the freedom that I chose. And I remember as we were talking just about some experiences where I started to perceive fear from the time I was little. Because from the time I was little, it was kind of portrayed that the world was scary and people were bad, and it was not trusting. And so what I attracted from a very young age was from a very young age, I remember at 4 years old playing outside and a guy pulling up and taking pictures of me, and then being grabbed when I was 4 years old trying to walk home from to my house. I remember being grabbed almost off my bike when I was little. My sister remembered us walking to piano lessons and these guys pulling up and grabbing me and trying to pull me in the car. And I don't even remember that one. I was like, I just don't even remember that. And yet, those experiences led to rape attempts, the kidnapping attempts, a stalker at age 11. I was so in fear. I remember going to the gym as I, again, was trying to take care of myself. I created all this sabotage around my body, was anorexic and bulimic, because again, it's like I wanted to feel good and look good and feel all these things, but guess what? It scared me to death. Because I felt so unsafe from being followed from older men and pulling their penis out and just all sorts of things that from a young little girl's age was just like scared to be seen, scared to express, scared to be heard, scared to move. So I remember even being at the gym and being eyed down, and I literally, my whole body would go into fear and I would leave, I would bolt. Now today, if you're gonna give me a stare down the gym, I'm gonna look right at you and be like, looks good, doesn't it? Take a picture. Because I know I own my value and I own my worth. And I know that I am the source of my own experience, which means I am the source of my own safety. I'm the source of my own love. I'm the source of my own abundance. I'm the source of every experience. And that's one of the main things that I teach. We actually brought it up on my personal client mastermind. It applies to guys too, yet that's the main attribute of a goddess that I teach in my goddess program, my goddess retreat, is I am the source of my own experience. And until I realized I'm the source of my own safety, so I could create that I was safe in knowing my vibration, what I was attracting, what I was saying and speaking, my environment, all these things, that became, I'm the source of my own safety. So there's some points to this, yet what I want us to really get to and understand is that the reason we've been holding back and playing small is because deep down we have all these traumas that we haven't voiced, been fully okay with, and seeing them out of all the love and the light that they are. So I saw this show up for me, and I want to share this in that you'll see this show up in different levels. Instead of just going like I thought, I mean, I've done a ton, obviously tons and tons and tons of, I've been on the journey of the inner path for 20 plus years, and it's why I do what I do, and it's what I'm called to teach and called to give people these freedoms. And yet I remember doing so many processes of then finding these painful emotions stuck in my body and from these traumas and these experiences, and just fear in my body. As I've done some plant medicines, my body went into pure like little girl, like shaking, teeth chattering, like felt like I was in the corner in absolute fear. And having these emotional connections stuck in my body. And even with all the work that I did, when it shows up in certain points and we get awareness like, that's still there for me to see what else I get to love and see this at a different degree and level. And so I remember when I first got offered to do national TV. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I woke up one day and I went to stand up and my foot wouldn't work. Like I couldn't put any pressure on my foot. I literally almost fell over. It was like so much pain. I couldn't even put an inkling of pressure on one of my feet, which makes it like you can't really walk with only one foot. So it was like I instantly went into my chiropractor, and he adjusted it and fixed it. And within an hour, same thing. My foot wouldn't work. It was just like, and I know from all of my journey, I instantly went, why was I even going physical? It's emotional. And I went right to going, what's going on? My right foot moving forward, masculine side, the doing energy. And it was like, what am I afraid of moving forward in? And all of a sudden I connected the dots. If I go on TV, my little girl that has the contracts with me, my little girl, the pre-7-year-old is the one who's running your life, guys. He's the one who literally chose the decisions based on your experiences that create your identity, and everything that you're doing, you're operating subconsciously right now. So my little girl had made the contract like, oh, no. If you're seen, you're going to be attacked. And I found that that's what I felt inside. Like the little girl was like, if you go on TV, you're going to be seen, you're going to be attacked. Because my entire life, I had attacks. I had been, rape attempts, kidnappers, stalkers, and all sorts of attacks. And so I realized, whoa, wow, that's what I'm still holding, or I'm still subconsciously. So an unconscious commitment I'm subconsciously afraid of is that if I'm seen, I'm going to be attacked. Now, if I didn't stop to actually tune in and see what was going on, all I would have created was like more resistance, because everything in me said, no, do not step out of this comfort zone. This is scary. If you step out of this comfort zone, you're going to be attacked, you're going to be hurt. Everything in me, my ego, my little girl, all of that was just trying to protect me. So when I'll go, oh, sweetie, thank you for letting me know that you're just trying to protect us, and that's what we chose in the past was our form of protection. That's what we decided was how we stayed safe, is we stayed hidden and we stayed under the radar so that we wouldn't get attacked. You know what though? You know what's really true? And I got to share with my own self, my little girl, and say what's really true. I know that's what we used to believe, but what we understand now and what's really true is that the more I'm in the light, the more I am protected. The more I stand in the light, the more angels I attract to me, the more amazing friends I have in my space, the more I am safe. By being seen and heard, I am safe. When I stay here hiding in the shadows, sweetness, that's when I'm unsafe. That's when I am the most susceptible to being hurt and scared and having this fear energy. So again, I was like, whoa, wow. And as I moved through it, foot healed right away. I was good to go, and I moved forward, reaffirming to myself, that's right, I'm safe. I found I love to do TV, and so many more opportunities came from that. And it just, again, we moved through to expand our comfort zone. And then there was, it was a couple years ago, actually, I think like 2 years ago, I was in Vegas to speak and to do some stuff, and Dallas came out, and he ended up saying he wanted to watch this movie. Maybe you guys have heard this movie. It was like something about a room. It was like The Room, and it was about a girl who got abducted. The guy raped her. She had a baby inside this room. The baby was now like 5 years old. And I didn't even realize we're watching this movie, and I just went into fear. Like my whole body went into sweats. I went in, cramped up in my stomach. Everything about me was like fear. And I didn't realize there was still, just watching that brought up for me how scary I felt, how there was things inside me that I hadn't gotten to work through fully. And that led me to the next level of me going, this is why those things will show up. This is what I can now see and love and accept for me to move through. So really what I want to bring presence to is that this is so beautiful for us all to share. And what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? That when we realize this is why we as men and women have kept ourselves from receiving the opportunities, from receiving the abundance and the worth, and all these things, if there's these deeper hurts that may not even be connected, we project out and we create resistance. So in another example that in a way, like it connects, and yet it's not even the same thing. Just like a day or so ago, I had a girl telling me that she's been going through my online stuff, and just like, she's like, every client I have, everyone I talk to, I'm telling them all these things, and they end up being like, she's like, I'm learning all these things and shifting my life and all my friends' lives. And she ended up saying, she's like, had all these friends, like, oh yeah, I follow her. And one girl had said that, she followed me, but she got turned off because I talk about how much money I make. And I found that to be really interesting. I was like, oh, I remember the day when I was so scared to share making a certain amount of money. I was like, oh no. And I realized I had belief systems that were like, you don't do that. That's prideful. That's, you just don't share money. And it's just like why you won't talk about sex. You won't talk about your issues. You won't talk about your shadows. And I had to call myself and go, wait a minute. Why am I afraid to say I make a certain amount of money? And I had a dear friend that actually said to me, he's like, you make over 100 grand a month. This was when I had just hit making 100 grand a month. He's like, you make over 100 grand a month. I see you. He's like, you stand and you tell these women to stand in their full alignment, to have the body of health because they're worthy of that, to have the most epic relationships because you're worthy of that, to have, your bank account booming or all these things. He's like, but you never really say, like, you never really give clarity to people of like how much you really make. As a single mom that's been through what you have and done all this, how in the world are you not sharing this? And I realized, am I hurting others by not standing and giving permission to say, hey, if I could do this as a single mom and going through a life of abuse and trauma and all these things, and I chose to own my own value, and this is how easy it can be when we align to those things, I'm actually just buying into the story of wearing a mask. Same reason why I feel free to share whatever comes through me is that if I was choosing something different, I would just be buying into the story of wearing a mask, to just play safe, to what's safe. If you just calm down, you'd get more followers. If you just wouldn't do this, more people would buy into you. And I'm like, and then they'd hear exactly who I am somewhere else, and it doesn't align. I would rather clear that space and know that if it doesn't fit for you, I'm going to open up the space for who it does fit for. So, I mean, and what was interesting about this, again, I remember being like, it really scared me to share that. And I had to say, you know what? I'm here to stand and say, hey, this is possible. This is what I've been able to create, and you can create it too. So if someone is triggered by that, interesting, like what's that connect to? It could be deep down that we're afraid that if we are making a lot of money, that we're seen as not, like we're not a good person. I know I had several beliefs connected to that. Same thing though. So like if a sexual trauma or abuse, it's like, if we have that, and we're seen, we make more money, we might be abused. You see how these things can all be connected? And that's why if we don't heal, it doesn't mean that it just is showing up in your sex life. How you do sex is how you do life. How you do one thing is how you do all things. So it's not just limiting you in your relationships and your connections, it's limiting you in everything, every single aspect. And the reason I felt more inspired to talk about this is because I realize now, as I've thought back about all my clients that I've worked with in my masterminds, a lot of peeps in my program, definitely in my goddess retreats. In my goddess retreats, we really lean into the sexual energy and how sexual energy is creation energy. I want you to think about that for a second. Sexual energy is creation energy. It was in Napoleon Hill's book. I remember the first time, and I read Napoleon Hill's, in one of the spaces where he said that highly sexual beings, they're usually entrepreneurs, but highly sexual beings, they learn to transmute that energy into creation. And see, our whole entire society has had this thing about, what's good and bad and right and wrong, even with sex, and not speaking it, and yet, to even find someone else attractive. I remember being raised and it was like, I wouldn't have even, to my husband, I would have never even said like that Brad Pitt was hot. Because it was just like, oh no, you're the only one. It's like we suppressed and held everything down versus being like, yeah, super sexy, like, that's some good energy. Like, and using that energy doesn't mean I'm gonna go fuck the person. It doesn't mean I'm gonna go jump on someone else. It means I'm like, there's a polarity of energy, which is just when we understand our masculine energy and our feminine energy, and creating the polarity of that, the beautiful ebb and flow. It's like the figure eight, the in and out, the give and the receive. It is the flow of the universe. So if we're also blocking our sexual energy, you are blocking creation. So can you see how if you have sexual fears, traumas, abuse from the past that we haven't healed, all we are doing is holding ourselves in the comfort zone of space of, first off, how can you ever get to a place of having the most open, vulnerable, beautiful, authentic love relationship that is just a space of, it's the baseline is safety and support. It's a space of always love, support, and acceptance, not to mention epic, passionate, amazing sex, because we're so scared of these traumas and how that is also affecting your business, your creation, your, how you are in your job, anything that is in creation energy, being seen, being heard, being expressed. So it might not, again, if we shined our light on the world on another aspect, I'm sure everyone would raise their hand there too, because there's across the board all these beautiful experiences, and realize I call them beautiful experiences, because let's drop back into how we take a little bit more responsibility for this, or more see this out of the love and light that it is. Because I know it can be, I'll give you an example, because I always believe in just sharing, authentically my experiences and how I learned through this journey. And I remember after I found out I had a cheating husband, I was raised Mormon, in a very strict religion, and it was like you get married in the temple. I was a virgin until I was married, and it was like, this is what you're supposed to do for God to love and approve of you. This is what it's supposed to look like. I'm just supposed to be a mom, and I'm supposed to do these things. And I remember first, hi guy, I love you. I remember first, the first time I found out that, my former cheated on me, and went through that experience, as again, there was only this blame, shame, victimhood feeling. Like, I remember feeling like the first things that came up for me was like, how am I going to take care of my kids? Like, it wasn't even about the love of the relationship. I realized I was literally in a go through the motions pattern of life, because I was just in survival, because I was just acting in the mask and operating in everything that I'm supposed to do. And as I opened my eyes more and walked down my journey more, I realized one day I was like, holy fuck. Wow, what have I been saying since before I even got married? Or it was the programming going on in my brain that I got to take full responsibility of. What I was saying is that I was like, if I'm always the perfect mom and the perfect wife, my husband will always love me, appreciate me, and never cheat on me. So I realized I attracted and I chose a man who I felt like, if I choose this, what felt like more of a safety net for me, then I'll never be cheated on. That was my baseline. And again, now notice all my abuse that I'd experienced, all the rape attempts, the kidnappers, the stalkers. I was just so desperate for safety. And so because that's what I was vibrating, of course, that's what I got to attract. Even though it looked safe on the outside, what I experienced is what I called in. I attracted a cheating husband because that's exactly what I was afraid of experiencing. And I was so focused on not experiencing, which was experiencing, because that's what my words were saying. That's what my thoughts were afraid of. That's what I was always striving to be good enough. I was wearing a mask and I looked like the perfect wife. I remember he was actually a restaurant manager. And going into his store with my, babes, my kids were only 1 and 4 when I found this out and got divorced yet, going into his store and how his employees were like teenagers and things like, that is not your wife. That cannot be your wife. That is not your wife. And he was like, yes, it is. I was like, if I look perfect and I'm perfect, I'll always be safe. I was so desperate to be safe, but who was controlling my safety? I was the only one that was responsible for my safety. I was the only one that could give me safety. And I had to go through first taking radical responsibility of what I was choosing. And I could see how I could understand how from the time when I was 4 years old, starting to have experiences of abuse and it happening my entire life, I could fully understand. Thanks for all the loves, guys. So sweet. I could fully understand why that was my perception of how life had to be, of how I had to stay safe. And so there's a couple things. I just did a video actually in my Best Life tribe yesterday. I was driving and I felt like this was kind of coming up, all this Me Too stuff. And I realized one of the aspects we don't do is we don't claim our anger around it. We don't actually claim the anger we feel, the abuse we feel, because again, we've been taught to suppress even our anger. So you get all this abuse and then we get taught to suppress it. So it's a lot of times we kind of validate and, well, that happened because of this and I'll just ignore that. And we don't ever actually get out any of that emotional energy. This is adding to the blockages in us. The ability to not even have been able to speak about is adding to that, which now we're doing, but now we're kind of adding this heavy energy. And so how do we work through this? So first off, getting to look at it is like, wow, I chose this. Now, I know this can be really challenging for when you look at, like, again, I was, seeing what, one of my dear friends posted, seeing several of them. Oh my gosh, I have some of the most beautiful, amazing friends, and all of them experience sexual abuse and physical abuse and verbal abuse and all sorts of things just like I did. Noticing again across the board as a humanity, we can go, whoa, this is happening. Let's shine some light on this so that we can transmute it from darkness to light by realizing as a species, we've treated each other in separation. Okay, so if we've been operating as a human species in separateness, I'm separate from you, this is mine, that's yours. When we have that, there is a separation from even abuse towards each other. Now, one of my favorite books, if you guys get a chance to listen to something that's one of my absolute favorites, it's The Conversations with God, Awaken the Species. And it's like, it is finally fucking time for this kind of information to be available. Again, this is why all of these things are happening. The time period is happening where all this is coming up. It's finally being spoken, where everyone's like, yep, abuse, 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 where in the past we've been like, oh, I would never tell anyone that I had abuse. Now all of a sudden it's like we're speaking this understanding and looking at how we have been operating. And so in this book, he calls them HEBs, highly evolved beings, meaning other evolutionary species that are way more evolved than us, and how they can't even have the thought of hurting another because they see themselves as one. Because if you're one, now if we share energy, and see, this is what we're really experiencing, we're in an interdependent energy. So the first level of consciousness, we do this thing where it's like, it's codependence, okay? So it's the belief system we were taught of, like, well, you plus me, we equal one. What that really is, to burst some of your bubbles that are still maybe thinking that that's how it operates, is that you broken half and me broken half, we're codependent broken halves. Together, we're whole. And it's just two broken halves bouncing off of each other in their limiting patterns and codependency patterns. Yet that's the first level of consciousness. It's like a codependency. Okay, when we operate and we step up into understanding and seeing things through the second level of consciousness, we see it through the eyes of independence. Okay, all of a sudden we're taking full ownership, right? Like what we're talking about. It's like, cool, how do I become the source of my own experience? I become the source of my own safety. I know I'm the creator of my world. So yeah, we step into this independence, but then what I saw would happen, and this is why I got inspired several years ago to start my goddess retreats, is because I'd see women be like, fine, fuck you, I'm independent. I don't need you. I don't need your penis, and I don't need your money, and I don't need anything. And it's awesome that we're standing in power to go, cool, I'm the source of my own wealth. I'm the source of my own strength. But it doesn't come from a place of like, I'm afraid of you and I don't need you. It actually blocks more possibility. Okay, this is just like when we go to think that, hey, it's got to look this way, like business has to look this way, how I create money has to look this way, this relationships are this way. Again, from our beliefs and our programming, what we're doing is it's like where you're a horse that's wearing blinders, right? I'd make a horse noise for you right now. That's awesome. I just feel silly. So it's like a horse wearing blinders, okay? A horse wearing blinders, and all it can see is the little step in front of him. When we actually go, what else is possible? We open up the entire fucking multiverse to infinite possibility to deliver us of the ways that we could create it for ourselves, right? Somebody thought that was funny. I'm so glad, because I just did like horse noises, made sexy faces for y'all. See, this is how cool I am with being free with myself. It's so much more fun. So the third level of consciousness, and what I would teach my women in Goddess to step into, and my badass brothers, the badass beings that I get to work with, is the third level of consciousness is interdependence. Okay, because there has never been anything but one energy. So we've been lying to ourselves to think that we're separate. You and I are an energy that we share. We share an energy with the plants that we utilize, and Gaia, the ground. We share energy with all things. There is energy in all things. We are vibrational beings. So that's why we are all feeling this. As we're all bringing this up and we're talking about all this heavy energy, and we're seeing all this, fear come up in the world of all the things shifting and changing, and we're looking at how have we been operating as humanity. No wonder the shit is hitting the fan. Gaia is fucking mad, and the universe is like, you can no longer operate and survive as a species when you're operating in this level of behavior and consciousness towards each other. So what calls us forth to rise is these traumas and these experiences that say, whoa, this isn't working. we get to find a different way of operating as a species in humanity and coming to oneness, coming to that wholeness. And that's why when we can drop it back now and look at this and say, okay, so if I know that, I look at these experiences that I had and I can say, oh, you know what? It might be hard to say. I remember having a client that started being abused at 2 years old by her own father. And as I was doing couple work with her and her boyfriend, he's like, I just don't get it. How can anyone ever validate, abusing a 2-year-old? And it was really hard to look at. Whoops, I keep kicking this. It was really hard to look at. How could I say that I chose this? How could I say, because, at that age, are we conscious of the words? I could say it as an adult. I was like, whoa, I realize how I've been saying if I ever get cheated on, and I'm looking for that, and I'm afraid of that. And it started way back when I was little. Yet it's a little bit more challenging if it starts at 2 years old or 4 years old, or these ages go, wait, how did I attract that? I was just a beautiful, divine little being. And the thing that I would contribute beyond that is to realize when we look at how we are so much bigger and greater than this human body right now, than this human brain. I always refer to my human brain as my silly human brain. When I catch myself in triggers and, like the silly human things, I'm like, oh, silly human brain. That's right. What is really true? Who am I really? And when we realize that we're way beyond this, we actually chose in. Now, if we can imagine this, we chose in on this as our human experience. Hopefully, it seems like I just got dim on you guys. Hopefully my battery's still good. And you guys will tell me if you can't see me or can't hear me anymore. And so when we look at if I chose in on this human experience to have all of these different emotions, so those of you who haven't heard me share this, I look at my experience with my former. And again, I call my what most people would refer to as their ex, I say former, because it's a positive energy. There's no X about it. There's no Xing him out of my life. There's no negativity about it. He's just my former love. And as I looked at, and I took full responsibility first off, and I looked at it and I was like, what's really true for me, what resonates for me, and the healing that I found is that my former was one of my very best friends. He was and you could call it in heaven, you could call it, in, where you create your Akashic soul contracts and records, universe, higher self, whatever. You could call it in the space between our lifetimes and our worlds, or whatever you choose. Is that I knew that in this human experience, there was things that I wanted to learn and understand. We go from, as divine beings who know we literally can create effortlessly. There is nothing separating us from anything we physically want to manifest into form. When we come into this experience, it's like, well, so if everything's, pixie dust and fairy tales and rainbows, it's kind of hard to wrap our head around what shame energy feels like, and what, different pains are, what different experiences are, even what forgiveness was. And I know, I was like, wow, you know what? I don't even understand what this thing forgiveness really is. What is unconditional forgiveness and love? How do you even get there? What does that even feel like? And I can see my former as being one of my very best friends that chose in on that experience with me here to give me that beautiful gift of understanding. And to the point that almost every time I talk about it, I literally tear up and I cry out of pure appreciation and gratitude. The being that I am now and the life I get to live now because he stepped in with that experience to give me that gift. So even if it's a challenge to go, well, how did I attract this and speak this and look for this and believe this? How was I vibrating, or how was I calling in and taking responsibility of the experiences that I had? And this might trigger people because, again, the other day someone was like, seeing it as, oh, this is shaming and blaming women into seeing why they had the experience. It's like, what we really get to do is we get to honor and love that we all had these experiences. And we get to get some feedback and understanding as to why, and know that we can now change them instead of just saying, it was never your fault. We're saying, how did I contribute to this? How, do I see the world now? So now even let's go back to that 2 or that 4-year-old. And if you can even be open to seeing it as, I'm not sure why that happened at that age or how that could have come into my space, yet I can trust and believe that I know everything happens for me. Nothing happens to me. Everything happens for me. And obviously, if I am, the creator, it's so effortless to create that everything I'm thinking, I'm looking for, I'm speaking, I'm feeling manifests into form. There's a reason why I chose and contracted even previously to have that experience to allow me to be who I am now. And as I've done a lot of sexual abuse healing work, not only for myself, but for clients as well, I remember, one that, he'd been abused at like 4 years old. And again, was just like, every time we looked at it as, it had been done to him, it couldn't be healed. But the moment he saw it as, I chose in on this for a reason. And now once he saw that and he looked for the reasons around that, he saw, wow, because this happened, then later when that happened, I stepped up and then that ended up stopping it over here. And there's a reason why it happened to me. There's a reason why I had those experiences. So, as much as it can be scary for a lot of individuals who might, not have this understanding to just be like, us look at as a society how all these things have happened and all this dark energy, what I really believe is possible now is that we can all start to begin to operate in a humanity where we share all things, meaning like there is nothing to hide and there's nothing to prove. We can operate in pure transparency and pure authenticity and pure vulnerability. And when I learned years ago that vulnerability was the greatest gift I could ever give anyone, instead of me being like, oh, I want to hide and pretend because I want them to like me, and instead realize when I could say, hey, you know what, I noticed I'm really struggling with this. And this is really what I want to choose for myself. I'd love support here. And there was no hiding and shame. It allowed them to go, wow, you know what, I'm struggling with that too. Or, it's like a gift we give other people of freedom to just not be wearing a mask and all the energy that's released with that. So I hope that from this, we can all, again, be like, awesome that we're talking about this. And how do we start to heal these wounds and now move forward operating as a species in seeing ourselves as, if we begin to see ourselves out of love and light and oneness, would we be choosing the same behaviors? We can start to see these behaviors, and instead of looking as like, well, this is just a dark society, like there's so many people that are going to be abusive, we've all experienced abuse, it's like, actually, what if this is one of our greatest gifts of growth? That it's such a vulnerable space. I know for me, my sexual, the sexual challenges or the sexual traumas and those things that I went through, feeling attacked, as I dug in and did more and more work inside, seeing the layers and the subtle energy show up, it allowed me to find lifetimes of connections of sexual slavery, sexual abuse, and all these things that obviously there's a reason. If so many of us are raising our hand, what if we actually saw it as a commonality of one of the greatest trials we could ever experience to give us our freedom, to understand what it feels like for someone to feel powerless or feel unsafe, and to feel vulnerable and feel those things, and know that I would always only choose to honor other people, and that I can take full responsibility of communicating and sharing, honoring, like men and women honoring each other. There's a reason why it's all coming up, is so we can rise in our humanity together to create a different experience and a different story, and we get to heal the wounds that we have. And so the reason that I as I was tuning into this, and that I saw this, I was like, wow, this has been a huge part of what I've done in, my goddess experiences and goddess retreats. And with all this coming up, it actually inspired me that I'm going to throw a one-day mini goddess event at my house. This one's going to be only for women. I know that men have dealt with this abuse as well. And obviously half my clients are men. I love working men and working with the badass, beautiful men that I get to work with as well. And I just really felt inspired that, you know what, because normally I'll do one goddess retreat once a year, because I also have my Ascension Adventures, I have my personal clients, I have my boys, I have a very balanced life that I'm harmonic life, a life of harmony that I'm committed to. And it was like, you know what, this all coming up and showing us, I hope that so many of us are seeing this is why I've been playing small. Because I saw how I was afraid to get on TV because I thought I was going to be attacked. I was afraid to be attractive and be seen at the gym because I was afraid that, there was going to be some sort of something scary that would come of it. And in many ways, we've learned to stifle our voices. We've learned to not express. We've learned to not be heard, to not be seen, and to sabotage our bodies and to create disease and sickness and dysfunction inside ourselves because we're holding all of this as a byproduct of these traumas that correlate to this. And so I would love to rock a bunch of women through breaking through these blocks really quickly, because there is so much power in you learning to transmute the pain into power. We get to transmute the darkness into light, and that is what it's there for. It's there for our greatest gift so that we can catapult into sharing the messages and the freedom. And I see this massive surge as I'm, tuning in now and it's coming through. It's like, this is all coming up and all this heavy energy. And we as leaders and influencers and the people that are like, listen, like we get to show how we get to create something different. We've chosen it in our lives to create something different. How do we as a humanity bring everyone to feel this and move through this and create something different? And I see this huge surge of just the magic happening in our world, from leaders stepping up and being like, no longer do I need to hold that blockage inside me. I've transmuted that bitch into light. It is actually my source of power. It is my source of greater expression. And I something I always say to my peeps, they hear me say this over and over and over again, is I say, how you choose to respond is what you get next. How you choose to respond is what you get next. Knowing every time that I even feel like I get bitch slapped, and with the triggers and the core wounds that want to show up to be like, oh, this is another layer, because I know that core wound gets to be transmuted into my greatest core strengths. And when I feel like I get bitch slapped, I remind myself, I'm like, that's right. I'm breathing and I'm leaning into this fully and I'm feeling this fully. And this is going to catapult me into my next level of receiving more love, more abundance, to be able to express even bigger, to be an even greater, bigger light for this world, for my calling here, my experiences here, for me to live in more passion and play and all of it in this beautiful gift of service with one another, in this interdependency that we have. There can be no lack. There can be no scarcity. There can be no sickness or disease when we align to oneness as a humanity, and you align to your divinity, your core truths, knowing who you are in this remembrance that could only magnify all of your light being given to others. That is when we get rid of poverty consciousness and lack and scarcity, which is all man-made. It's all human-made. Silly human brains. It's how we get rid of sickness and disease because no longer is this all negative emotional memory inside us. It's how we actually rise together, is to rise in love. And you can only first do that by rising in love with yourself and rising in that empire, the empire of you. I always call it an empire, and some people like having negative correlations to empire. I'm like, you know what good you can do when you create an empire? When you create that you're worthy of that $1 million plus empire and abundance in all aspects of your life and your being, you have a massive amount of good that you're giving out to the world, because all those things are just a reflection of how much good you are, how much value you're giving to the world. And it first starts with healing these wounds within ourselves. So any of you, I just literally just decided this, where I was like, I got the downloaded inspiration. I saw it here at my house. I was like, one day, as many goddess beautiful beings as possible, we're going to rock through healing these traumas and aligning to standing as the source of your own experience and the source of your own safety and the source of your own abundance and the source of your own love, and utilizing this interdependence energy with the multiverse to be able to magnify all that we are. And so if any of you guys are interested in that, you're going to get to message me, because I haven't even had my team create anything yet, like a link or whatnot. I'm thinking it's going to be sometime soon in November, just because all this energy is so prevalent. And it's going to be really low cost, because I just want to be able to support. This is where I feel called to be able to do a massive amount of support right now for all this heavy energy and all the shifting in the world, and how we take that energy. And then the more that each of you know how to do this, you get to share it with others as well. And you get to be that brighter light. So I would love to hear from you guys. If you have any other questions on this, just getting to, thank you, Jeff. I love you so much. Such a sweetheart. Anything else that I can answer for you guys? If you have any specific questions, please message me. Please move forward in some way of getting to look at all this beauty, all this, that we're sharing. And as you now see these things come up, how can you add value to them in feedback of how we get to create more change, how we get to create solution. I am actually in San Diego. So in San Diego, California is where it's going to be. So thank you guys for the love and the adoration, all the hearts. And as I just kind of rant, I just turn it on and I choose to do what's coming through. But this has massively been coming through. So I hope this sheds some light on how we can heal what we've experienced and how we can now share that with our brothers and sisters as this energy is here, and we can transmute this heavy energy into clearing energy and light energy. And one real quick thing that reminds me of is even when I have the Magical Manifestation Mansion here. I'm just, hanging out. You can see the meditation hills up there and the pool behind me. And this is where we're actually going to do the goddess one day. And when I first took over this house, we felt so much crazy negative energy in the space. We were grid activating it and clearing it and doing all these things. And my nanny even found a voodoo doll. And what was beautiful is I was like, wow, we got to change that energy. And when you take dark energy and you transmute it into light energy, it is the most powerful fucking energy that exists. It's gone from, it's taken the shadow. And this is why you transmuting your shadows into your greatest gifts allows it to be like, it's just coming through you, and there's only infinite possibility, because you've been in the darkest shadows and you now only see that out of love and light, and that can only serve you, and it no longer has to limit or hurt you. So we really get to take these things from, these traumas correlating to our limiting situations, and we get to allow them to become our greatest powers and turning our pain into power. So I truly hope that some of you that are getting to watch can share this if you feel like there's someone that it can assist and serve that has maybe shared their Me Too's or shared their abuse. And I'm happy to give recommendations on some different aspects and different things that could be really good insights into starting to heal these processes as well. And I look forward to hearing all of you guys continue to share this beautiful experiences that you're having and changing them into light. So I love you guys. Powerful choice is yours. Choose your best life. Have an awesome, wonderful day. Love you.